Okay, in this video we look at risk control. Okay, and again, in a company, they can say, yes, we have a hazard. Out of 23 hazards we identified, say 1 or 2. Each hazard, they prioritize it, they give it a score. So it just means if you have 100 hazards, you can't fix them all in the same day. You don't have time, you don't have the people to do it, you mightn't have the money. So if 10 of them are high risk and the rest are low risk, then you fix the 10 high risk first, because high risk means somebody's more likely to get injured. You still have to manage all the 100. They all have to be done, but just because the 10 red ones are there at high risk, you can do them first, and that's accepted as common practice. And down here, we talk about the controls. Controls are what do you have in place to help people to prevent them from being injured. So if you look at this short little thing, if you look at driving a car, okay, and if you drove to work, Sruthy, driving a car is probably one of the most dangerous things you'll do. Okay, either you can hurt yourself or you can hurt somebody else. Why do we do it? Okay, it's because we have to, mostly, or even going transport. So what we want to do is, in our heads, why do we accept the risk of driving a car? In our heads, you've done a risk assessment. You're aware of the hazards, that you can hurt somebody or get hurt yourself. You know the risks are high, okay? But you think under your risk control part of your brain, you figured out, well, okay, on balance, I think it's going to be okay. Why? Well, you have a seat belt, you have good tires, you have special brakes, you have speed controls on the road, okay? There's a learning to drive, you have a permit from the government to drive, and your car is probably maintained, okay? So in risk assessment, it's the same thing. Lots of these things are happening. What we want to do is put a formal structure on it, and it's called the hierarchy of control measures. That's just the term it's given. And the top is, can we eliminate the hazard? And eliminating the hazard just means that we get rid of it, okay, and we win, okay, the hazard is gone, great. In the case of the petroleum industry, they eliminated lead from petrol. So the good advantage for them there was that they didn't, we have no more lead in petrol today, and lead is bad for health. Substitution, okay, substitution, if you can substitute the hazard with something less serious, that's good. What that means in a practical sense down here is that for a substitution, for a chemical, okay, if you can do an experiment and use a different chemical, which is much less harmful or much less toxic or harmful to your health, and still get the same results, then you use the less toxic or the less harmful chemical. You've substituted the hazardous one with something less hazardous, and that's the philosophy. So the top two of these things are important. I just want to check the video is recording down here as well. Okay, I hope it is anyway. So inside there, the top two are important, but they tend to be philosophical. In MAI, most people start down here, engineering, and we don't want them to enter any information here under eliminate substitute. It's just that they thought about, could they eliminate the problem? Could they substitute the problem with something less serious? And but most of the time you're coming down to these last 5. Okay, so eliminate, if we're talking about driving, means you stay at home. Okay, you don't drive, but that's not always the most practical thing. So we're back talking about the car and driving as the hazard. Substitute, okay, you could cycle or you could get the bus, but sometimes these are even more dangerous than driving. Okay. The third one is engineering controls. Engineering controls are things like seat belts, driving, anti-lock brakes. Admin controls are things like procedures, okay, we record signage. So the government is admin controls. We have to adhere to speed limits, okay. We have to have a driving license. It's an administrative process that we have to comply with. Down below is training. We have to get trained before you get a license. Monitoring, we check things. Monitoring is supervision, calibration, maintenance, also auditing and inspection. So in the book you can read that, but down here any monitoring we're doing should be there. And the last one is personal protective equipment, PPE. Okay, you're going to note when you look at the risk assessment for the safety and environmental, the processes are practically the same, the 2 modules. And in fact, one is a 0 and the other one is a 1. Between a 0 and a 1, and the coding level marks it that you're either in the safety or environmental. So it's the same module behind for safety and environmental. But what I'd like to do is let the client be able to have more categories of control in this. For example, PPE makes sense for safety. We have PPE in the environmental one as well, but it doesn't make sense there. Okay, so it doesn't make as much sense. So I'd like more flexibility in version 4 where the user could, I suppose, have some degree. We can give them 7, but they could change it if they wanted to. So engineering and monitoring are related, okay, and down here there's just more examples. But the key thing for companies is that people, they must put down on paper what they do in terms of risk control, because if they get inspected by the police or the regulator, if they're not on the risk assessment, it means they're not doing them. So the risk assessment is a very important document. And if you're trying to manage risk also, it's very hard to manage it. If you're supposed to manage something and it's not on the risk assessment, how do you know you have to manage it? Okay. And people need to be trained on risk control. So coming back into MAI, what do we do? Okay. Again, so down here under MAI, we have these 7. Okay. Eliminate and substitute are generally blank. So I can click here, or I can go across the top. Again, clicking, too many clicks. We're down here to engineering. This says edit the list of control measures. It should be add edit, because I want to add as well, add a new one, not just editing the existing. People get confused on that. They say I can see the edit button, or where is the add button? Add new. So if you come down here, what we have in the background, okay, is engineering controls for this specific hazard, Sruthy. Okay, so if we're talking about fire, we'll have engineering controls for fire. If we change the hazard, if we make the hazard chemicals, then this list of engineering controls is different. And even for the subcategory of fire, I said a while ago, fire could be fire likelihood and severity, or fire question and answer as a subcategory. Each of them have different engineering controls. Okay, so this is very specific to the hazard that we're doing in the assessment. And people can come in here and the system is learning. So as you do an assessment, these controls are there, okay? And you can select ones. Now, if I add in a new one today, this Sruthy control, okay? It's asking me for a reference. We want to get rid of the reference at the top. It's gone. It was a concept before. It's not, I'm not even going to explain why, but let's take it out. Let's get rid of the reference field. Down here is we're going to say SRUTHY, fire control. And now when I add this, it's available. It goes to the bottom, which is okay. But the next time I do a fire risk assessment and I select engineering, the Sruthy control will be there. Okay, so the system is learning, and that's the nice thing here. Okay, now the thing that's awkward though is if I spell Sruthy wrong and I want to edit it, I can't edit it here, which is a bit of a disaster, because what we want to do really, I have to go out to the configuration and edit it there, and it's so slow and it's tedious and everything. So it'd be nice to change that. So here's editing, add a new control, or if I didn't want to add a new one, if I don't want Sruthy, I just deselected this there. Okay, so that's it. So I hit save, and that's where we have these controls. It's exactly the same. Admin control. Admin means procedures, records, and signage. I can select controls that are there already, just like that. Okay. And if I want to add a new one, I hit the plus. The same for PP. So I can just come down here. So add a new one for PP. So I'm going to call this, okay, forget this. Just put in a number for now. We tell people to put in anything. SRUTHY PP. Okay. So the Sruthy PP is there. So the next time somebody does a risk assessment, Sruthy PP is going to be there as well. Okay, so that's a good thing. So when I select any one, I just see the controls that I've entered. You don't put one, normally you just put in on some categories. You don't have to put something in for every category. But if I come up here to risk control, it summarizes all the categories: engineering, admin, PP. Okay, so there's something over here for corrective actions. I want that gone. It's too confusing for people. But the idea is that if we have a Sruthy PP as a control, that means it's there today. The corrective action just means, okay, I want to put a corrective action against this. And all that just means is, okay, that we have the Sruthy PP. This is the example, I suppose. Okay, Sruthy PP, maybe we need to reorder new stock of PP for Sruthy as levels are too low. The idea was we could put in a corrective action against Sruthy there. You can see we have an issue with the box going off. Okay, this was an issue that was fixed. It's kind of after creeping back in here. Again, the box is just gone off the side, so we'll have to get that looked at as well. But down below, when you have a job, the job must be assigned to somebody. So I'll assign that to Dan. A job assigned to somebody without a time frame doesn't get done on time, so we give them a time frame. And here is just to help. If we have 100 of these corrective actions on the system, what does it mean? Well, this is down here. It's a lack of engineering or lack of PP. It's just a category. So we can say of 100 actions on the system, 10% were lack of PP, 20% were lack of documentation, 50% were lack of training. That's all that is. It's just analysis coding for reporting later on. So I can save that action on the system and it comes in. But this, we don't need it here. We want corrective actions down here only. Okay, so that's the only thing. We don't need to have corrective actions against each of these controls here because the users frankly get confused. Now, so we'll take it out over there and we'll have general corrective actions down here where somebody can come in and do it. I'm just going to shut up again for a second, Sruthy. Does that make sense there about the controls? That controls are what you do to make things safe. Corrective actions are controls that you want to put in place, okay? So my control here, I'm going to add just one more here. My control is, I'm going to say, okay, up here, nobody in the office is aware of fire safety, okay? So that might be that's the problem. The non-conformance is the issue. So we've stated the issue here, which is nobody in the office. My correct, come down here, sorry, NO. Down here is we're going to provide fire safety training for all office employees, just like that. Now, if I have a job and I don't have it assigned to somebody, it won't get done, so I assign it to somebody. Dan, now I have a job, I've assigned to somebody, so it will get done, but it's not going to get done in time. I must give Dan a time frame. And what happens in this is, in the background, we've configured different categories of corrective action. Okay, and they're the same, and it's in the corrective action module. It's outside the safety risk assessment. It's a separate one. Major is 30 days. So the user puts that in. We ask them to put in brackets what each means. And you can see over here, I have till 11th of December to fix that. Whereas if they change this down to minor, I have up to January to do it. So depending on what I select, it tells me how long I have. And over here, I put in my analysis code. The analysis code here is lack of training. Okay, down we go. I'll just go back to my date, actually. Sorry, I managed to delete the date accidentally. So I put that back in. Oops, maybe we came across a bug. That's okay. So back in there, that's the date. So now I have a job. Okay, over here, I have the job. So my issue, this is the problem. This is the action I want. This is who needs to do it. This is the time frame. And this is the analysis code. I hit save and it goes in on the system just like that. So what we use this for, okay, we have an issue in the test where we used to have where the temporary ones weren't saving, but what we use this one for, Sruthy, is for things we want to have here, but are not yet there. They're going to be put in place in the future. So all of these ones here are already in place today. We go out, we can see them, but these ones are not yet there. They're going to be there in the future, so we put a corrective action in place for them. When you go through these ones, I think the idea, the green and something like that, is just if you put in a PP control. I think for these other ones, there's a control measure. You'll have to check what these green ticks are for. But my idea was, I can't remember why, but when something changes from a triangle to the green tick, okay, I think it was just a visual clue to make sure that people had stuff in. We don't really need that because, in truth, you don't have to have something in each category. Here it's saying, it's pretending like there's a problem, that I have nothing in for PP, but the truth is if there was nothing inside, you know, I don't need to add anything. Documentation media is the last one. So you come over here, you can upload a file. You select the file you want to upload, just like that. You hit, okay, well, generally a picture is better. You hit submit and it goes up onto the system. Okay, so again, the same media control, but I think the best place for the media control here is to put it back up. When we're talking about what's the hazard, we should have a picture of the hazard here. Overloading of sockets and put in the picture here. It's stupid having it at the bottom. What you will see is if you're putting in multiple pictures, just like back here, I'll just come into pictures, wherever they are, pictures, okay. If you put in pictures like one, okay, that's fine. You hit submit, it goes up. But then when it comes over here to the next one, okay, that goes through. I want to upload another one, it becomes page 2. And that's fine. That's just the way it should work as well. So over here, submit, and it goes in on the system. Kaboom. And we now have 2, but it's page 1, page 2 across the bottom. Okay, just like that. So that's there. What I said, I think the media file is out of place at the bottom. It should be down here under the hazard or something like that. I think it's a nicer place. Does that explain, just as a first pass view, that we have a hazard ID? The hazard is what's the hazard? Okay, we say what's the hazard? Is fire. Where did we identify it in the lab? When? And who's involved? Okay, and the associated factors. What can happen to you as a result of fire? Who's exposed? The risk level from fire today. It could be a high risk, just like that. Okay, and if in 12 months' time we do some work, we can get the risk down to low by putting in place certain corrective actions. Okay, so you can see again the logic is slightly out of kilter. Okay, in version 4 we might just improve that. And why is when we talk about the risk today, we have controls in place, and the controls are here. We have this emergency door, we have some procedures, we have some PP, for example, as well. So these are the controls in place today. Corrective action are controls we want in place in the future. They're not yet there. And immediate. So I'm just going to shut up for a second. Does that give you a feeling for what the module does, Sruthy? Just for starters, does it give you an overview?